What? Examiner? Zhao Tianji and Little Li had never heard of such a concept. What was an examiner, and what was an examiner here for? The two of them were confused. When Xiao Mushui told them this name just now, the two of them were still in a daze, not knowing if they had heard wrongly. It was already impressive that they could become ordinary workers here. Now, they were inexplicably given a title. Was this reliable? They felt that there was a hint of deception. Xiao Mushui was the woman who had led the two of them here. At this moment, Xiao Mushui was introducing the two of them to the surroundings of the warehouse. It looked like she was introducing the materials in the entire warehouse to the two of them. However, this warehouse was terrifyingly big. There were thousands of things inside. It was a huge workload to introduce everything here. The so-called examiner is to test the way to use each material and whether the candidates are applying for the appropriate position. Not only are the two of you in charge of the assessment of the materials, but you also have the right to set the monthly usage of materials for every student. These are all within your rights. If you slack off in any way, a certain amount of contribution will be deducted. Xiao Mushui introduced this to the two of them, but the two of them felt that they did not understand it very well. They couldn't understand. They did not know what this meant. It seemed to be a very powerful official position, but there was a huge loophole. Little Li asked Xiao Mushui, "Miss, are you joking with us? We don't have anything on our hands. We haven't even touched these materials. Do you think it's possible for us to control the distribution of these materials?" Xiao Mushui put down the list in her hand and looked up at the two of them. "It's not that I think you can do it, but the boss thinks you can do it. You're the people the boss has chosen. Whether you have the qualifications or not is not something I can judge. All I need to do is read these documents to you. If you have anything you don't understand, ask me." Little Li curled his lips and whispered into Zhao Tianji's ear, "This Xiao Tian is really controlling everything." Xiao Mushui pursed her lips, as if she did not agree with Little Li's words, but she did not defend him. "This is a list of all the existing materials here. There are also some materials needed for all the professors' pills and equipment after the academy is open. The two of you will evaluate them according to everyone's condition and distribute the materials to the appropriate amount." Zhao Tianji smiled and looked at Xiao Mushui. "If that's the case, isn't it within the rules for us to distribute more materials to people we're familiar with every month?" Xiao Mushui did not refute this. Instead, she nodded. "That's indeed the case. If you think it's necessary, you can distribute the materials to anyone. The higher-ups won't ask about this. However, there's one thing. Every month, the Chamber of Commerce will also evaluate the work you do. If you don't meet the requirements, some salary will be deducted accordingly." Zhao Tianji finally understood a little. He actually did not know why the two of them were valued by others to do this job, but at least it looked quite formal now. Even though he might be a slave to others in the future, being able to control so many precious natural treasures was something he would never dare to think about in his life. He casually picked up a box beside him and opened it. There was a golden bone lying quietly inside. The bone was still twisting slightly when it was taken out, as if it was not used to the light outside and even turned over. Zhao Tianji was shocked by this thing and almost threw the box with bones to the ground. Fortunately, Xiao Mushui picked it up. "You'd better be careful when you pick up these materials. All the losses during the transportation process will be counted as your monthly performance. If you lose too much money like this, I'm afraid you won't have any good advantage in the final evaluation." Xiao Mushui put the material back and asked the two of them, "I wonder if I've made myself clear." Little Li's eyes widened as he looked at the large item that the two of them were moving. It was a complete animal bone skeleton. This demon beast was so huge that it must have been at the 7th or 8th stage of the spirit transformation realm when it was alive. This was a treasure that the two of them would never dare to think about in their lives. However, this treasure was actually everywhere in this place. Moreover, the two of them were moving it casually without any precautions, as if they did not care that it would be stolen. This was simply a treasure trove. If the two of them were to be let in, wouldn't they be waiting to empty this warehouse? Little Li definitely could not sit still anymore. He grabbed Zhao Tianji and replied to Xiao Mushui, "Miss, you've already made it clear enough. The two of us heard it clearly. Now, the two of us are very, very satisfied with this job." Xiao Mushui looked at them in confusion and said, but I haven't mentioned your salary. Little Li smiled and said, Miss, look at our relationship. Why are you still talking about salary? We're unemployed to begin with. We're already grateful that Boss Zhao can give us such a chance to have such a job here. Even if we don't have a salary or anything, we're very happy to do this job. Qiu Mushui shook her head helplessly. She looked at the two of them and said, Forget it. Since you think I've made myself clear, I'll get busy with my own things. You can go to the registration office of the academy in front later and ask around. Someone will tell you what to do. After Qiu Mushui finished giving her instructions, she left on her own accord, letting the two of them study properly in the warehouse and recognize everything in it. The two of them stood out among the workers. They were like two hooligans entering a vault. They looked around and wanted to reach out. However, they were also worried about those people at the side, so they did not dare to really touch it. If they were captured by some lord, wouldn't they die? That fellow was ruthless. This is a 10,000-year-old immortal fruit. There's actually such a big box? What is this? 1,000-year-old ginseng? Why is it only used for the bottom? What's in the middle? Li was shocked by the sight of something. He had never seen such a luxurious warehouse before. It was like a huge treasure vault. No wonder people said that the myriad treasure chamber of commerce was as rich as a country. This warehouse could support generations. They were so rich that no one in Ping City could compare to them. What kind of person was behind Zhao Tian? It was simply too exaggerated to be so rich. Oh my God, old Zhao, did you see that? In the future, the two of us will be able to hold so much wealth in our hands. If the two of us steal a little, we won't have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of our lives. Perhaps we really have a chance to reach the spirit transformation realm in this lifetime. Think about it. If the two of us can reach the spirit transformation realm with our talent, will we be able to take another step forward? Zhao Tianji was also quite frightened now. He thought that that fellow had brought the two of them here to do manual labor for them. However, he did not expect that he would assign them such a job. This job did not sound stressful at all. Instead, it was very relaxing. Moreover, he had such an important asset in his hands. This was really a lucrative job. However, what was his motive? What strengths did the two of them have that made someone take so much trouble to bring them over? At this moment, in the hall on the roof, the two people in the image were very uneasy. Young master, do you think these two little thieves are really reliable? The two of them have always been good at being thieves. What if they take these things away? Li Yuanqing observed the two of them with interest. He seemed to be watching some interesting experiment. He was holding a cup of spiritual tea and watching leisurely. It's fine. I think they're quite spiritual. I hope they can do it smoothly. Young master, it's not that I want to say this, but there are too many materials in the warehouse at once. I'm afraid many people can't control themselves. Moreover, although the situation in Ping City is still stable, there are also many unstable people. Why don't you reconsider it? Let's not talk about this anymore. I've already thought it through. This matter has been decided. I still have other things to do. Go down and guide them personally later. I don't think they've ever worked in a proper chamber of commerce. I'm afraid I've made you spend more effort. Young master, are you sure you want me to go? I mean, shopkeeper Zhao, do you think the two of them are not worthy of your status? Of course not. Zhao Tian felt that he was going against his conscience after saying this, so he said helplessly, the two of them are ultimately thieves. If word gets out that our myriad treasure chamber of commerce took in thieves to do business here, it will be a huge blow to the reputation of our entire chamber of commerce. You're thinking too much. Li Yuanqing put down the spiritual tea in his hand and walked to the window to stretch. Our academy has just risen and needs some new blood to join. I hope you can help them more in the future and give them more chances to grow. This is very important to the entire Ping City and even the entire human race in the catacombs. Zhao Tian sighed. He knew that his situation was definitely incomparable to his young master's. His young master was a rich person and had countless wealth on him. He could withstand the army of several cities alone. However, he was still concerned about the fate of the entire human race. He was really magnanimous. Although Zhao Tian felt very guilty, he felt that this was more or less inappropriate. Young master, I will naturally cooperate with your decision. However, even if there's a mistake, I will deal with it immediately. I hope that if they make any mistakes, you won't protect them." He looked up and realized that Li Yuanqing had already left. Li Yuanqing had left after saying that he had something on. Zhao Tian had his head lowered and did not see him. Only then did he realize. Zhao Tian smiled helplessly. This young master had always been like this. He came and went without a trace. There was nothing he could do. He turned to look at the scene in the middle and realized that the two people who were strolling around the warehouse suddenly began to walk up. They had already arrived at the registration hall above. It was in full swing, and the two of them were looking around in confusion. To be honest, he did not understand what characteristics these two people had that attracted Li Yuanqing so much, as if they had a firm hold on his young master. However, after getting rid of the grudge in his heart, he suddenly felt that he was more or less interested in these two people. After all, there were not many people in the world who could interest Li Yuanqing so much. He simply tidied his clothes and left the office on the top floor. The crowd coming and going in the hall on the first floor was crowded together, surrounding the few registration points. "Hey, is my name on it or not? I was here first. I saw their names on it just now. They were behind me. Where's mine? I got here before them. Why didn't you put my name on it? Did you guys write it or not?" There was a small table surrounded by a group of people. In front of it was a floating circular list. This circular list was a square list no matter which direction one looked at it. Every new name would appear from the bottom and push up the top. In total, the entire page would display the names of 100 people. These people stared at the table above and kept looking for their names, afraid that they would fall behind. Zhao Tianji and Little Li had been shopping here for a long time, but they did not see anyone coming to pick them up. They came here and looked at these people who were nervously signing up. They were even a little anxious and wondered if they should sign up too. At this moment, a huge hand suddenly landed on Zhao Tianji's shoulder. "Little." Before that person could speak, Zhao Tianji grabbed him and pressed him down in front of him. "Let go, let go." This was the scene when Zhao Tian and Zhao Tianji met. The people at the side watched with their mouths agape. They could not believe that this brat in front of them actually dared to attack their boss. "Shopkeeper." Time seemed to have stopped. Zhao Tianji stared blankly at Zhao Tian, who he was pressing down on his hand. He hurriedly let go and pretended that nothing had happened. "Hello, shopkeeper Zhao." Zhao Tian rubbed his shoulders and turned around to size up Zhao Tianji. What was so good about this kid? Since young master valued him so much, he could take this opportunity to test him out to prevent young master from falling for it. "Come with me." In the domain space, Li Yuanqing looked at the entangled cocoon in front of him with all his attention. Was it good or bad that the bloodvine had become like this? Recently, Li Yuanqing had been receiving more and more signals from those seeds. The seeds that had fallen silent had also become more and more active, as if the bloodvine was about to wake up. Moreover, after the bloodvine absorbed a large amount of energy, he transformed into such a cocoon. In the past 2 days, this thing had been jumping even more fiercely. He could vaguely feel that there was energy inside, as if it was about to rush out. Li Yuanqing was not sure what would jump out. That bloodvine seemed to be a figure from a long time ago. Was it good or bad to release a figure from the ancient times again? What kind of impact would it have? After neutralizing the Black Dragon's waves of attacks, the stability of the entire Catacombs world was guaranteed. The Black Dragon would probably not launch another attack in the short term. Moreover, these few waves had consumed a lot of the Black Dragon's energy. Now that Li Yuanqing was powerful, he was not afraid that he would make a comeback. Li Yuanqing could not say anything about letting an old antique out at this time. However, there was one thing he knew, and that was he had to go back after building this catacomb world. However, Li Yuanqing had checked. The passageway that once led to the human world had been closed by the Black Dragon. Now, the passageway was tightly shut, and there was nothing here. At least, Li Yuanqing had yet to find a way to leave. "Master!" Hu Jujio stood carefully behind Li Yuanqing. "How's it going?" "I've already sent someone to control Blackstone Mountain. We've discovered many demon territories nearby and have already cleared them out. What does Master plan to do with that place? How are the demons in the wilderness now? Are there any large-scale movements?" "Most of the demons in the wilderness are already under our control. Many of them turned to us after seeing that the situation was not right. At present, they don't seem to be much of a threat. As long as we can manage them well, I believe we can control them very well. Okay. Most of the demons living in the wilderness appeared in groups. Although there were many of them, most of them had to follow a leader. Now that the dust had settled and the 3 cities were all in the hands of the humans, many demon generals knew that it was very difficult for them to turn the tables. They had already expressed their goodwill to the various cities. Many of them had offered many treasures or signed contracts. They had entrusted the fate of their entire race to these humans. This was something they would not have dared to think about in the past. In the traditional concept, this catacombs world was the chosen place of the demons. However, at this point, this chosen place had become the natural territory of the humans, and they were helpless against it. Master, about building the academy, you should decide on the design. It's fine as long as it fits the general concept, Li Yuanqing instructed. I think Ping City can't have only one city lord. Can we choose a new city lord to try? You can't bear all the responsibility. Hu Juzhou's originally dim eyes suddenly lit up. She looked up at Li Yuanqing. Master, what do you mean?
Li Yuanqing nudda.
We can't stay here forever. I think this matter will be settled one day. At that time, it will naturally be time for us to leave. Perhaps we can entrust the rest to him now and save a lot of trouble. Master, you're right. I'll immediately start looking for a new city lord after I return. Actually, I can see a few people, but they still need some investigation. Li Yuanqing was observing when a huge human face suddenly appeared in front of him. This scene was so sudden that Li Yuanqing was caught off guard. This face was not a normal human face. Half of it had the appearance of a living person, but the other half of the face seemed to be covered by a layer of wood, looking extremely strange. That's you, kid. This person seemed to be studying Li Yuanqing carefully through that scene, causing Li Yuanqing to subconsciously take a step back. That's right. This aura can't be wrong. He was talking to himself. His face seemed to be twisting muscles, as if he was making some expression, but he didn't seem to be doing anything. Li Yuanqing looked at this face that had clearly not changed at all. He had a feeling that this fellow's expression was very rich. This strange feeling made him feel very uneasy. Don't be afraid, kid. I'm here for you. This time, he made a real expression. It was a smile. It looked like a smile, but this smile was very twisted. The half of his face that still had a face was normal. Although his skin was very dry and he was crying, his entire face was filled with wrinkles when he smiled. Compared to the wooden half of his face, this smile was much more normal. For some reason, in order to make his wooden face more realistic and make the same smile appear on his wooden face, all the wooden pieces had to move. Even from afar, Li Yuanqing could feel the crackling sound on the other end of the image when this fellow was smiling. Black Dragon is right. The spiritual energy in this place is so thin. I didn't expect a human kid like you to be born. This wooden-faced man kept talking. Black Dragon said that you're not from this place. Don't be anxious. I'll look for you immediately, or you can come and find me. I'll wait for you here. I believe you won't disappoint me, right? If you don't come, I'll take the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. After saying this, he suddenly threw the blood vine seed in his hand high into the air. The entire Rong City was now stacked with wooden passageways. In the wooden passageway stood people in the shape of zombies. These people seemed to be alive and dead at the same time. They stood there in confusion and did not move, like dolls at the mercy of others. Looking down from the sky, it seemed like the entire Rong City was a huge toy factory. In the passageway below were display cabinets with many samples. If this was a toy, the scene would definitely be very spectacular. However, these were hundreds of thousands of living lives. They had actually become like this. What do you want to do? Li Yuanqing silently looked at the miserable scene in the image and muttered to himself. The wooden-faced man seemed to be able to hear Li Yuanqing. He flew up from below and arrived in front of the blood vine seed. He reached out and caught the seed that was about to fall. Kid, I'll wait for you here. I'm sure you won't let me wait long, right? Ha ha ha. With an extremely strange laugh, the wooden-faced man crushed the blood vine seed in his hand, and the scene disappeared. What happened, master? Hu Jujiu had been watching for a long time, but Li Yuanqing did not move at all. It was as if he had been possessed. She had been guarding at the side worriedly. I need to leave for a while. Leave. Little man is back now. You have to cooperate with her and strengthen the entire city defense by 2 times. No matter what happens, don't go out on your own and guard Ping City. Master, what happened? It's Rong City. I need to go to Rong City. Do you want me to go with you? I can help. Stay here. Li Yuanqing did not expect this to happen just when he thought the dust had settled. Who was this person? Why had he come? He did not seem to have good intentions, and he could feel a very strong threat from him. Although he did not meet him directly, Li Yuanqing could feel it. In Rong City, the huge city lord manor was empty and very quiet. A burly figure floated lightly down the aisle. It was as if he did not have feet. He floated into the air and slowly moved forward. This person slowly stopped in the middle of the meeting hall. He looked up and half of his face was covered by the bamboo hat. His face was turned towards his original seat, the city lord throne that symbolizes power. Now, this throne had already belonged to someone else, and he had become someone else's slave. The wooden-faced man lowered his head and looked at the general. How are the preparations going? Master, all the array formations are ready. When you need them, they will immediately detonate. What about the cage outside? It's been built. Okay. The wooden-faced man let out a strange laugh. He looked up at the intricate patterns carved into the dome and felt even more amused. The general standing below suddenly trembled violently a few times. His body seemed to be very unfamiliar, as if it did not belong to him. Because he was trembling too much and his head was raised too high, his cloak fell. The face under the cloak was identical to the face sitting on the city lord's throne. Only half of their faces were left, and the other half was covered by wooden skin. Master! The wooden-faced man was in a good mood just now and replied, What is it? Didn't you say that you would? The wooden-faced man said impatiently, How many times do you want me to explain it to you before you understand? I've already promised that your clansmen will survive. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. Master, that's not what I meant, the general said hurriedly. He was not familiar with his body to begin with, and he could not speak properly in a hurry. I mean, the power of this explosion is so strong. Shouldn't we move people to a safe place in advance? If it spreads, not only will that kid be killed, but everyone here. All right, I've already heard your nonsense. When the wooden-faced man flared up, the great general immediately did not even dare to breathe. The wooden-faced man thought for a moment and finally decided to calm him down. I said that I've already made it very clear to you. This deal between the two of us is a win-win deal. You can obtain a huge amount of power. If I take that kid away, this place will be yours from now on. Why are you still so anxious? Instead, you're so submissive. It's completely unlike you. I won't dare to forget your kindness to me, the general immediately replied with a bow. It's just that I've also promised my clansmen to protect them. All right. I know your concerns. You're doing your best. Your clansmen will definitely be very happy to know that you're thinking so much for them. At that time, I'll take good care of them. No matter what happens, I won't let them be blown up. Thank you, Master. The great general knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing. Thank you for your kindness, Master. All right, you can leave. I believe that kid will be here soon. At that time, you have to be smart and not miss the best opportunity. You should know what will happen if you delay anything, right? Master, don't worry. I will definitely raise my spirits and turn this Li Yuanqing into a corpse. That's good. The power in your body is given to you by me. I've always remembered it. Good. You can leave now. I don't want to see you again. Yes, sir. By the way, how are you taking care of the singers I chose yesterday? Bring them up now. They're all ready. I'll bring them to you immediately. The general slowly retreated. Not long later, on the corridor outside the door, a row of women in green silk walked leisurely into the hall. They had gentle bodies and were all very pretty. However, their eyes were so empty. The city gates of Rong City were all open, but there were no longer any people coming and going. However, the overall administrative orders here were very strict, so there were fewer people coming and going. Ever since City Lord Yi left, Rong City was completely under the control of the Great General and the others. The entire Rong City was in a very high-pressure environment. Although the citizens felt that they were under a lot of pressure, at least they had a stable life. Moreover, the status of the human race in Rong City was relatively high. No matter what, there were demons at the bottom. The human race's life was still more comfortable. Therefore, although the management rules in Rong City were relatively strict, most humans could still accept it. In comparison, the living environment here was a little too harsh for the demons. Some of them had already left this place and escaped from this troublesome place. They were considered lucky. Those who did not have the time to escape were about to become slaves and live the same life as the humans before. However, all of this was in the past. Rong City was silent now. No one made a sound. There was no sound at all. Only the rustling sound of the wind blowing past the leaves of the trees. Everything stopped here. The humans were still like puppets. One by one, they were still in the wooden passageway. Li Yuanqing's heart skipped a beat when he saw this scene from afar. The current situation was much more difficult than he had imagined. What the hell was wrong? How did that person do it? This was clearly a puppet technique. This puppet technique was actually so powerful. Li Yuanqing thought that his attainments in puppet technique were already very deep, but compared to this person, the puppet technique in his hands seemed to be a little insufficient. Moreover, he could only say that he was ashamed of his inferiority. Li Yuanqing stood at the entrance of the city gate. Not long after, a little frog bounced up to him from outside. The little frog was completely made of machinery. It arrived less than 10 meters in front of Li Yuanqing and suddenly jumped up high. Then, it inflated in the air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a graceful woman in a puff of smoke. The woman's entire body was covered in wood-like patterns, and she had a very strange smile on her face. She gently turned to the side and gestured for Li Yuanqing to enter. Li Yuanqing slowly walked into the city. Rong City was no longer as noisy as before. Even the commotion of the patrol team was nowhere to be seen. This silence was really terrifying, as if they were about to fall into an abyss. A balloon suddenly flew out of the sky. On the balloon was a huge head. That head looked like the wooden-faced man. Kid, see how this thing has calmed the humans down. The most boring thing in the world is humans like you. You talk endlessly all day long, causing people to have a headache. This thing was very loud and could be heard throughout Rong City. Li Yuanqing walked along the street under the lead of the paper woman. The big balloon above his head was like a guide as he spoke. The main road you're taking now was extremely crowded before I came. There were all kinds of messy shops beside it. Those patrols only turned a blind eye and pretended not to see anything. They casually took some benefits from others and made the entire city into a mess. His voice was still very emotional, as if he had experienced it himself. You humans have indeed created many powerful cultures and many outstanding technologies. These exquisite buildings, the concept of these designs, and even the puppets in my hands were created by you humans. As he spoke, a row of women suddenly walked out from the side of the road. These women were all very pretty and were actually young women in their teens. These young women smiled very happily, revealing their rows of teeth. After the girls walked out, they stood in front of Li Yuanqing. Only then did Li Yuanqing notice that they had already arrived in front of a stage. This stage was on the main road they had to pass through. It was a set area. Young Master Li, enjoy the program I prepared for you today. I believe you will definitely like it. I have to say that you humans really have unique creativity. However, only someone like me can use it well. As the wooden-faced man belittled the humans, he did not forget to praise himself. After he finished speaking, the dancing team in front was already ready. Not only were there more than 10 graceful women dressed in special clothes, but there were also people beside them who were ready to play the music. The musicians were also smiling very happily. However, the smiles on their faces looked as fake as the paper sticking on their faces. The music rose and the girls danced in the graceful music. They flew around Li Yuanqing like butterflies. It was their fragrance that spread out and enveloped Li Yuanqing. After the song ended, the girls retreated shyly. They stood on the stage and gently bowed to Li Yuanqing before slowly retreating from the original path. Young Master Li, what do you think of me? Is it much better than when you humans were in control? Li Yuanqing did not look up at the big balloon in the sky. Instead, he looked ahead. Cut the crap. What do you want? The wooden-faced man paused for a moment before saying regretfully, I say, you humans don't know how to appreciate it at all. I've shown you such a beautiful dance and such a graceful body to weave such a beautiful picture. However, not only are you not grateful, but you're also so anxious to destroy this atmosphere. It's really boring. Li Yuanqing snorted and replied, I don't want to hear so much nonsense from you. I just want to see you release them immediately. Let them go? The wooden-faced man smiled. Of course I'll let them go. I have no grudge against them. Why should I make things difficult for them? However, the two of us seem to have some hatred. I wonder how young Master Li plans to resolve our previous hatred. I've never seen you before. Of course. How could someone like you, who lives in the bottom world, have ever seen me? When the wooden-faced man said this, his tone was calm. But you took something you shouldn't have. This doesn't belong to you, and you're not welcome. You didn't leave when you should have. That's wrong of you. This is a space that belongs to the human race to begin with. You were the ones who forcefully occupied it. Now, you just want to take it back. Why do you have to make it sound so dignified? Dignified? The wooden face found it difficult to recall. Well said. Don't humans like to do dignified things the most? It does seem very ridiculous. As soon as he finished speaking, the balloon in the sky suddenly exploded, filling the sky with humans. There were old and young, men and women. They were all wrapped in the huge balloon and were suddenly thrown down from the sky. Ha 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 ha. The wooden-faced man's arrogant laughter echoed throughout the room. Hurry up and do it. If you don't do it, all your clansmen will die. Li Yuanqing's body had already disappeared. He flew into the air and suddenly opened his hands. A huge shield appeared from his body. Under his urging, the shield expanded in the wind and turned into a base that was 1,000 feet long. Li Yuanqing forcefully brought down the humans who were exploding all over the sky with this huge shield. He retracted the shield with both hands and shrank it back. All the humans gathered together and finally landed on the street in a row. These humans looked around in shock. They did not know what had just happened. They only knew that there seemed to be an explosion. Then, they woke up in midair. Then, they only saw the young man in front of them. Everyone stared at Li Yuanqing warily, as if they were looking at an enemy. Save them, save them. The wooden-faced man had appeared behind Li Yuanqing. How many people can you save? So what if you save these people? Will they be grateful to you? Will they feel that you saved them? Or? The wooden-faced man smiled evilly and silently stuck himself behind Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing ignored him and only looked at the humans in front of him. I know him. He was the one who tricked the city lord out back then. The saintess died in his hands. That's right. This person is a devil. He wants to destroy our entire Rong City. He was the one who did it this time. Why did I become like this? Why did Rong City become like this? It was all him. The people who had recovered their minds widened their eyes in anger and approached Li Yuanqing. What they saw was not a clansman, but an enemy with a deep hatred. Devil, what did you do? You turned the entire Rong City into this. We have to use this devil's life to worship our ancestors and comfort the heroic spirits of the dead. Kill him. Suddenly, someone waved a flag and shouted, Kill him. The people behind shouted along, Kill him. All the shouts gathered in one place. The voices became louder and louder until they echoed throughout the streets of Rong City.
Li Yuanqing sudan li ratrata.
He casually threw out a black square platform and black energy fell from it. These black threads implicated these people and turned them into puppets. Did you see that? He did all of this. The wooden-faced man had jumped out at some point and stood in front of everyone. He pointed at Li Yuanqing and said, He's a master of puppetry. He was the one who controlled all of you and made you kill each other. You're already dead. Tens of thousands of your compatriots died by your own hands. All of this was instigated by him. The humans glared at Li Yuanqing, but there was nothing they could do. Their bodies were firmly controlled, and they firmly believed that some bad memories that suddenly appeared in their memories were all done by this person in front of them. They killed each other. They waved their artifacts and attacked their compatriots. At that time, they were not as soft-hearted. Now, looking at that scene again, it was like hell. Everyone wanted to find an outlet, and this outlet was Li Yuanqing, who was in midair. Devil! Kill the devil! At this moment, the black threads suddenly began to loosen. The loosening feeling became more and more obvious. Immediately after, the devil crystal platform seemed to be repelled by a powerful energy and forcefully retracted all the black threads. Li Yuanqing took the devil crystal platform in his hand. This wooden-faced man was powerful and had very important methods to counter the puppet technique. The other energy that appeared from his body just now had a very powerful effect on the puppet technique. The wooden-faced man retreated to the side and looked at Li Yuanqing proudly. Hurry up and kill him. It's because of him that you've become like this. As long as this person is dead, everything will be fine. The human race will no longer be lazy and noisy. We won't do those completely useless things. It's all because of such a person that your human race has become like this. His voice echoed in their ears like the whisper of a devil, slowly submerging into their thoughts. Li Yuanqing retreated warily to a tall building and looked down at the people who had returned. These people had already surrounded him. Although there were only a few hundred of them, Li Yuanqing did not want to kill them. This situation was very awkward.
Devil.
A first-stage spirit transformation realm guy carrying a sledgehammer suddenly jumped out from the roof of a nearby house. He raised the sledgehammer in his hand high and waved it at Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing stretched out his palm, and a suction force suddenly appeared. Immediately after, the person holding the sledgehammer felt as if he had been sucked into a tornado. From the outside, this fellow's huge body gradually shrank when it headed towards Li Yuanqing's palm. In the end, it turned into a black dot and disappeared from Li Yuanqing's hand. The wooden-faced man's pupils constricted as he stared at Li Yuanqing carefully. He could clearly feel a strange energy flash past just now. There was no mistake. It's so powerful. He has a pure domain. He stared fixedly at Li Yuanqing. This kid indeed had some methods. No wonder he could cause trouble here. Since Li Yuanqing had already made his move, he no longer hesitated. An extremely powerful suction force suddenly erupted from his body and spread in all directions. The humans standing below were still waving their arms and shouting when they were suddenly blown around by a violent wind. Immediately after, these hundreds of people were swept up by the tornado and swept to Li Yuanqing's side. After the violent wind dissipated, the entire street fell silent again. Li Yuanqing descended from the sky and landed on the wooden-faced man's face. The wooden-faced man stood behind the aisle with a smile and watched the show quietly. Looking at Li Yuanqing, who had suddenly appeared in front of him, the wooden-faced man raised his hand and applauded twice. All right. Applause echoed through the empty street. His hands, clapped together, felt hollow instead, like wood. As expected of someone who can cause so much trouble for the Black Dragon. You really have some ability. I admit that I've underestimated you. Li Yuanqing looked at the wooden-faced man coldly and asked, "Where's Black Dragon? Where did you come from?" "Where did I come from?" The wooden-faced man suddenly laughed out loud. As he laughed, his body suddenly rose into the air. "You really want to know where I came from?" "Of course." The wooden-faced man waved his hands elegantly and floated in the sky like a dancer. "I'm from a place you can't even get to. Do you think that's enough of an answer? Stop pretending. What do you want?" There were suddenly many snowflakes in the sky. They were not snowflakes, but pieces of wood when they landed on his hand. These pieces of wood danced leisurely in the air, swaying left and right with the wind for a while. Then, they gently slapped Li Yuanqing's face. "It's not good for you to know so much. Although you're indeed very unique compared to other humans, unfortunately, this uniqueness is only SOSO. Although the wooden-faced man did not gain any advantage in the first round of confrontation, he still seemed to look down on this young human man in front of him. It was as if Li Yuanqing was just an ant in front of him, and he could easily control him. He did not need to be respected at all. Li Yuanqing could not understand the strange words he was saying, but he could vaguely tell that this fellow had his reasons for being so arrogant. He had never seen these methods on this person before. Perhaps he did not belong to this space at all. As the wooden-faced man spoke, the speed of the wooden fragments suddenly slowed down. It felt as if the entire space had become heavy, making those wooden fragments unable to move. Especially those beside Li Yuanqing. They seemed to have frozen at this moment. A powerful pressure pressed down on Li Yuanqing. He had already set up a thick shield around him, but he could still clearly feel the existence of the pressure. Li Yuanqing looked warily at the wooden-faced man standing in the sky. The wooden-faced man stretched out his hands and opened his arms, as if he was embracing the world. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes slowly, staring at the darkening sky. This lower realm is really boring. After saying that, he lowered his head and looked at Li Yuanqing below. But fortunately, this trip wasn't in vain. Wherever he looked, the flow of all the wooden fragments stopped. Everything was so quiet. Li Yuanqing felt as if the time around him had been completely locked. There was no sound, no vibration. The entire space did not change at all. Everything seemed to have frozen here for eternity. It was a very terrifying silence. Li Yuanqing had actually fallen into someone else's domain at that moment. Although this wooden-faced man looked strange, he had endless methods. Now, this powerful domain made Li Yuanqing feel even more pressure. Li Yuanqing looked at the wooden-faced man strangely. His eyes were filled with confusion. The wooden-faced man was very familiar with this gaze, or rather, he thought that he knew what Li Yuanqing was thinking. "Kid, you must be very puzzled now. You must have many questions in your heart. You want to know why and who I am. Your talent is indeed not bad. In a place like the lower realm, you can achieve such a high cultivation level and have a powerful domain. If you were in the heaven realm, you would definitely have a bigger stage and better room to play. Perhaps you can become someone even more powerful than me in the future." The wooden face spoke with great emotion, as if he was really in love. "What a pity. It's really a pity that you provoked someone you shouldn't have provoked. If you had just stayed in your place and didn't do anything, you would still be alive now. The mistake is that you shouldn't interfere at any time." As soon as he finished speaking, his gaze suddenly changed. His entire aura immediately changed, and a strong killing intent appeared on his body. This intense killing intent was suffocating. Li Yuanqing looked at him silently. A small altar had appeared in his hand. "You want to kill me?" Li Yuanqing did not speak for a long time. He almost laughed when he suddenly said this. "Enough. I've wasted enough time with you today. I promised Black Dragon to help him resolve his trouble. However, this trouble is bigger than I imagined. Fortunately, it's still under control," the wooden-faced man muttered. After he finished speaking, the wooden pieces below suddenly began to move and creak. Li Yuanqing heard those broken things laughing like children. Immediately after, a very dangerous force suddenly exploded in the entire space.
D.
The wooden-faced man looked down confidently. The place where Li Yuanqing was standing had already exploded into a ball. If not for the fact that he had restricted the power of the explosion to that small area, it would probably have overturned the entire Rong city. However, he did not want to be so exaggerated now. After all, the Black Dragon in this lousy place was still useful. If he destroyed this place, he would probably not be able to get so much reward. Although Li Yuanqing had given him many surprises, it was a pity that the order he had received was to kill this person. The Black Dragon could not leave because he had something on. He had asked him to come over and even offered a very generous reward. He had to get this reward. What a pity. If I can bring this kid back as a child, it would be a good choice. After the wooden-faced man finished speaking, he gently flicked his sleeve and blew away the dust below. In his opinion, Li Yuanqing should have already been blown into powder. His wind would blow Li Yuanqing's ashes away. From then on, there would no longer be such a brat in this world. However, to his surprise, the place below was empty. There was nothing there. A gust of wind blew the smoke away, but the ground was still the same. He looked down strangely, wondering if there was something wrong with his eyes. Could it have been blown to ashes? In his opinion, Li Yuanqing still had some strength. Even if he died miserably, it was not to the extent that he did not resist at all. He shook his head slightly. His mission here was already over, so there was no need to think too much about it now. It was enough for him to go back and collect the bounty obediently. Why should he seek trouble for himself here? After throwing all those strange thoughts to the back of his mind, the wooden-faced man raised his hands again. A violent wind gathered beside him. In the violent wind, countless wooden fragments could be seen surging and gathering into a river. After the tornado gathered, it slowly spread out, as if it wanted to envelop the entire Rong city. The wooden-faced man was in the center of the storm and silently commanded the violent wind. He took a deep breath and was about to attack when he suddenly felt an extremely dangerous force behind him. He was sharp by nature and turned around without hesitation to shoot a bolt of lightning behind him. Countless wooden fragments flew in the lightning and hit a point in space. A few pieces of wood hit the area and instantly exploded. With a series of crackling sounds, the space was slightly distorted. The wooden-faced man looked carefully at the place and saw nothing, as if his senses were wrong.
Impossible.
The wooden-faced man was bewildered as he looked at the place. This was too strange. Was he really wrong? How was this possible? Or rather, there was another powerful human in the demon realm. It made sense. If it was only Li Yuanqing, it would not be enough to stir up the entire lower realm. The wooden-faced man nodded slightly, acknowledging his idea very much. If that was the case, everything seemed to make sense. Who knew what other secrets were hidden in this damn place? May I know who you are? Can you show yourself? The wooden-faced man cupped his hands and invited politely. He pretended to be polite. I was just passing by and happened to see so many humans in trouble again, so I attacked without permission. I hope you won't blame me. He spoke righteously as if he was a good person. Fellow Taoist, you're so kind as to think of the humans. I wonder if I can ask you to leave this place? In a very strange blind spot beside him, Li Yuanqing slowly appeared and stared coldly at this strange figure. It's you. Why aren't you dead? The wooden-faced man was shocked as he looked at Li Yuanqing, who had suddenly appeared. He had never expected Li Yuanqing to still be alive. Shouldn't he be dead just now? Why was he still here? What happened? Li Yuanqing looked at him with a cold smile and asked, Didn't you say that you would expiate the human race here? Why do you look forward to my death? You brat! When the wooden-faced man saw that this kid was still putting on an act with him, he could not help but stop thinking about why Li Yuanqing could survive. He only knew that he had to destroy this obstacle now. Let's see how many lives you have. The tornado that had calmed down just now suddenly became violent again. The wind kept twisting and stirring, as if it wanted to overturn the entire world. The sky suddenly darkened. The wooden-faced man was in the center of the vortex. Bright light flowed around his body, and his eyes shone on Li Yuanqing like lamps. Kid, you're so lucky. I want to see how you'll survive this time. The tornado drew a sharp cone behind him, and the top of the cone was pointed at Li Yuanqing's chest. Wherever the tornado passed, it swept through everything. The golden shield outside Li Yuanqing's body swayed with the wind, as if it could be torn into pieces at any moment. In the blink of an eye, the violent wind arrived in front of Li Yuanqing and whistled towards his face. The violent wind pulled the spiritual energy of the entire world and kept tearing it apart. In the end, it became deformed. His power had destroyed all the spiritual energy in this world. If the person facing him had no way to borrow power from the surroundings, he could only watch as the wooden piece wrapped around him and tore his body apart. The wooden-faced man did not look happy at all. His mistake just now had made him very angry. He did not expect that he had actually underestimated this kid. This little bastard could actually last for so long. Otherwise, it would have ended long ago. Now, he still had to dawdle for so long. Instead, he had become a topic of gossip. If word got back, he would probably be mocked. However, it was all over. Now, it was time to kill this human kid. The tornado hit Li Yuanqing as expected. Both sides let out an intense collision sound. The explosion was focused on that point and kept repeating. The blasted space trembled back and forth. He was enduring a power that this space should not be able to withstand. That huge power was so shocking that no one could resist. The wooden-faced man roughly stretched out a wooden palm and tore open a crack in the violent wind. The violent wind gradually dissipated, revealing the distorted space in the middle that was slowly calming down. He stared at the space and pondered silently. Even the space had been blasted into such a state. He believed that that human kid should die no matter what. Even if that human kid was on the verge of death, there was only death waiting for him. He was definitely dead. The wooden-faced man was very sure that he was very confident in the power of his explosion. However, for some reason, he felt a little uncertain now. It was as if Li Yuanqing's resurrection had destroyed all his confidence. In the domain space, Li Yuanqing looked at the distorted position in the sky and felt a chill run down his spine. If such an explosion landed on him, he would not be able to withstand it no matter what. As expected, the power of this space was too weak, and the power he had seen was too small. He had no concept of this level of power in the past, but now, he had a new understanding of this powerful force. After the explosion outside gradually weakened, the distorted space still did not ease up immediately. It was still twisting and turning. It took a long time to recover from the intense impact. Li Yuanqing was not in a hurry. In any case, he was very safe here. He only needed to wait here and go out after everything outside calmed down. Although the fellow was calling out quite happily, he could tell that the power in his hands could not be used endlessly. After all, this was not the space he was in. The power he could use was still very limited. Li Yuanqing was still waiting for the right time. The wooden-faced man looked at the distorted space strangely. He did not think much of it just now, but the more he looked at it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Although the space in the lower realm is fragile, it's not to this extent, right? Why is it distorted like this? What happened? He finally sensed the problem. The space here was a little too weak. Logically speaking, although he was strong enough, there were still powerful restrictions in this space, so he could not unleash them. However, this incomplete power could actually blow up this flat space into such a state. This was impossible and unreasonable. He walked to the front of the distorted space and slowly stretched out his hand. Some small spatial fragments were placed in his hand, cutting countless cracks in his wooden palm. What? He seemed to notice something. After a moment, when the space gradually stabilized, Li Yuanqing suddenly appeared from there. However, the space outside had already fallen silent. There was no movement at all, and the wooden-faced man had disappeared. Li Yuanqing hurriedly searched for the place where the crowd was gathered. He had not sensed the aura of the wooden-faced man for a long time. He thought that the wooden-faced man had gone out to kill, so he jumped out when he could not make it in time. However, when he spread his divine sense throughout Rong City, he realized that he could not feel any life force in Rong City. There didn't seem to be a single living person here. Li Yuanqing was shocked. Just as he was about to run to the place where the people were originally locked up and search again, he suddenly seemed to have realized something. He hurriedly flung his body to the side. The moment he left, a sharp dagger appeared behind his back and he missed. The dagger was held in the hand of a strange-looking puppet. The body structure of this puppet was very simple. Its arms and legs seemed to be connected by lotus roots, making it look very silly. The puppet's head turned 90 degrees stiffly and its gaze landed on Li Yuanqing. Its empty eyes suddenly lit up. Not good. Li Yuanqing cursed in his heart and hurriedly retreated to the side. Although this puppet looked very stupid, he gave off a very dangerous feeling. Li Yuanqing immediately shifted his body. The moment he moved, the puppet appeared where he was standing just now. It was as if it had suddenly drawn an afterimage and appeared out of thin air without giving anyone any time to react. If not for Li Yuanqing's fast escape, he would have been injured. Li Yuanqing's expression changed drastically. He looked around and his heart sank. The puppet was still chasing after him. Li Yuanqing was escaping very quickly, as if he could accurately predict the direction of the puppet. However, the puppet was chasing after him tirelessly. His body was tightly wound, and he kept running. During the chase, Li Yuanqing had clearly decreased his speed, as if he was about to run out of stamina. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly came from the sky. "Kid, I didn't expect you to cultivate your domain space to such a level. You sneaked into your domain space when I wasn't paying attention. You're really something. This strength is naturally enough to dominate a region in the lower realm. However, you chose the wrong place. This is not a place you should be." As soon as he finished speaking, it suddenly seemed to rain in the sky, and black spots appeared. However, those black dots gradually enlarged in Li Yuanqing's eyes and finally turned into puppets. The puppets landed on the ground like cannonballs, creating huge pits after landing. However, they could not feel any pain at all. One by one, they slowly crawled out of the pit and twisted their necks on the ground. After the preliminary adjustments were completed, they raised their heads and looked at Li Yuanqing, who was standing in the sky. That was their target. All the puppets' eyes lit up. They had locked onto their targets. In an instant, these puppets rushed towards Li Yuanqing like countless cannonballs. If he dodged slowly, he would definitely die. Humph! The wooden-faced man did not expect to encounter such a powerful opponent here. This kid had some ability. Unfortunately, it was precisely because of this that he could not keep this kid alive. Leaving this kid alive was a huge disaster. He had to kill him early. The puppets suddenly collided in the air and shot backward one by one. However, after shooting for hundreds of feet, they forcefully braked in the air and locked onto Li Yuanqing's position again. They repeated the same action and kept attacking Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing did not intend to fight back. The reason why he did not fight back was because he realized that he had already fallen into someone else's domain. No matter how he fought back, it was meaningless. This was because the world beside him was built by the wooden-faced man. He was a chess piece here. He had to think of a way to break out to have a chance to survive. Otherwise, he would die. He had a powerful domain in his hands. Although he was not completely confident in dealing with a domain, he had some experience. Those puppets were definitely not Li Yuanqing's main target, but where was the core of this domain? Li Yuanqing was still searching. As if sensing Li Yuanqing's intentions, the wooden-faced man laughed in disdain. Kid, do you think you can leave my space with your attainments and array formations? Li Yuanqing felt as if the voice was beside his ear. It was so clear. Don't waste your energy. You've already landed here, so just accept your fate. You're the one who's unlucky enough to fall into my hands. Li Yuanqing was not affected by these sounds. He was still spinning around and flying around the entire Rong city. The wooden-faced man still refused to give up. He was still muttering nonsense. If you obediently summon your domain space now, I can still spare your life. Li Yuanqing landed on a seemingly ordinary street with the door of the City Lord Manor behind him. He kept searching around. Just now, he had sensed a very different spiritual energy fluctuation. The wooden-faced man was in disbelief. Why did this kid find this place so quickly? Li Yuanqing gently stroked the altar in his hand. There was a palm-sized little person lying there obediently in his arms. He said something to Li Yuanqing in a very weak voice. Where the hell is it? Although he had found this place under the guidance of Li Yuanqing was still not sure where the weakness of this domain was. A figure suddenly appeared beside him. The wooden-faced man looked at Li Yuanqing with interest. Little guy, you have some comprehension. Why don't you come with me? I can save your life. As long as you agree to one condition, you can leave now. What conditions? Li Yuanqing looked like he had the intention to negotiate. The wooden-faced man smiled and said, It's very simple. You just have to cooperate with me and put on a show. I can help you deceive everyone and pretend that you've disappeared from the world forever. No one will ever know about you or what happened here. That sounds like a very tempting offer. I'm already thinking very highly of you by being able to discuss such conditions with you here. I've never said such useless nonsense to a kid from the lower realm in my life. That must have been too grievous for you. Li Yuanqing looked at him teasingly. You don't want to?
Ido.
Of course I do. But before that, I want to see what's here. Li Yuanqing took advantage of this moment to silently walk around to the back. The door of the City Lord Manor was tightly shut. He slowly placed his hand on the door of the City Lord Manor and pushed it heavily. Kid, do you know what you're doing now? The wooden-faced man's expression was very ugly. Li Yuanqing had stalled for a while just now. Little Dot had already helped him find the exact location of the core of the array formation. It was here in the City Lord Manor, behind this door. It could clearly feel very clear energy pulses here, twisting and turning. The waves of feeling were really very real, as if it was holding a heart with its hand. Of course I know. Seeing this, Li Yuanqing knew that he had found the right place. He could not wait to slam the altar on the door. The originally calm door suddenly became unstable after the altar touched it. The entire door kept twisting like a living creature. From the outside, it looked like he had suffered a lot and wanted to expel the disgusting thing in his body. The very thick blood vessels twisted into a ball, but all of them were pressed tightly against the altar and could not move. What? The wooden-faced man never expected that his domain space would be discovered so easily. Moreover, this kid was currently taking action and destroying a portion of his space. If he really succeeded, the consequences would be unimaginable. The wooden-faced man hurriedly attacked, wanting to stop Li Yuanqing. However, at this moment, a very strong energy fluctuation suddenly came from the altar. It spread out in waves, seriously interfering with the wooden-faced man's spiritual energy circulation, causing him to feel dizzy for a moment. When the dizziness disappeared, the wooden-faced man could only see that everything had returned to normal. Rome City had returned to its original state. Countless living beings below were twisting and seeking help. He was shocked to discover that his domain space was destroyed by Li Yuanqing when he had originally wanted to bring Li Yuanqing into his domain space and kill him. The domain space was greatly damaged now, and it would probably take a lot of effort to completely repair it. He glared at Li Yuanqing angrily. It was this kid who did all this. How did he do it? Go to hell. Wooden-faced man raised his wooden claws and grabbed at Li Yuanqing heavily. He could not tolerate that this fellow was still alive in front of him. He had to kill this person at this moment. However, the raised palm involuntarily lowered again. A very empty feeling in his heart forced him to stop the intense threat. He was surprised to discover that the spiritual energy in his body had completely dissipated. When Li Yuanqing attacked just now, he had messed up all his spiritual energy. It was not that simple to kill now. Li Yuanqing looked at him coldly. The altar in his hand was already raised high and landed on the head of the wooden-faced man. The wooden-faced man looked at the thing above his head in surprise. He could not understand what was wrong with this kid. Why did he become like this? What happened? Just as he was hesitating, an extremely violent force with an irresistible strong feeling attracted his entire body. Countless threads stretched out from the altar and tied themselves to him, twisting his body and deforming it until it turned into countless fragments. Li Yuanqing looked at the place where the person had disappeared with lingering fear. This person was definitely the strongest among all the opponents he had faced. Fortunately, he was stronger and was lucky enough to dodge it. Otherwise, it would have been very dangerous. He gently touched Little Dot, who was in his arms. This time, it was all thanks to Little Dot's help. If he hadn't found the weakness of the domain space immediately, he would probably have been killed by that guy in the domain space. Little Dot raised his little belly proudly at Li Yuanqing, as if he was asking for credit. Li Yuanqing took out 2 devil crystals and stuffed them into Little Dot's mouth. These were the remaining 2 4th-grade formation arrangement realm fellows. Little Dot opened his mouth and swallowed the devil crystal. He even patted his stomach in satisfaction. After eating his fill, he retreated to rest. Li Yuanqing put away the altar. There were still many humans in Rome City who were still controlled by the wooden-faced man. Although the wooden-faced man looked like he was already dead, it was hard to say if he had any backup plans. Just as Li Yuanqing was about to leave, a gust of wind suddenly blew past, blowing away the wooden fragments on the ground, revealing a wooden token. The wooden token was dark and inconspicuous. If not for the fact that the color of the wood beside it was too light, they might not have discovered it. Li Yuanqing waved his hand, wanting to summon the piece of wood into his hand. However, he realized that his power was like a rock sinking into the ocean when it landed on it. There was no reaction at all. He walked over strangely and looked at this strange thing. He did not know what material this was that actually had such a strange characteristic. It seemed to have a great repelling effect on spiritual energy. Li Yuanqing picked up the token and examined it carefully. The decoration on this black wooden token was very simple. There was a huge word Ling on the front and a circle of strange patterns on the back. These patterns were deep and shallow, and they were inlaid very appropriately. Li Yuanqing had never seen such a style before. If he had never seen it before, it did not seem to belong to this world. Perhaps it had come to the catacombs from another world, so these array formations must belong to that world. Li Yuanqing gently stroked the black token. He could not tell anything from it. After studying it for a long time without any results, he could only put it away obediently. Now, he had to hurry up and save those people. At the entrance of the city lord manor, a cloaked figure was busy moving back and forth. Every time he walked along the long passageway, there would be humans standing obediently on the passageway like a puppet. He transported these humans into the city lord manor one by one. It was unknown what he was doing, but he looked very busy. At this moment, a young man suddenly landed in front of this person. This man had anger on his face as he glared at the fellow in front of him. "General, what are you doing?" This hunched person was shocked to see Li Yuanqing and almost lost his balance and fell behind. However, when he saw Li Yuanqing's face, he seemed to heave a sigh of relief. "Young Master Li, it's you. You're here." He leaned against Li Yuanqing's feet and lowered his voice. "While that guy is probably fighting with a certain senior, quickly activate the array formation inside and send everyone out. We only have this one chance." He thought that the wooden-faced man was still alive. Just now, he had finally mustered the courage to gather the humans in waves outside the array formation that had been sealed. Li Yuanqing pushed aside his cloak and a disgusted expression flashed across his face. "How did you become like this?" The great general hurriedly covered half of his face and said guiltily, "I'm sorry, young Master Li. That senior came with you this time, right? Let me tell you, that guy is especially powerful. Let's leave quickly and let the senior escape as soon as possible. I'm afraid we won't have a chance of winning if we continue fighting him." Li Yuanqing looked at him silently. The great general thought that Li Yuanqing did not believe him and hurriedly pulled him back. Thinking of his current identity, he carefully let go of his hand and said anxiously, "Young Master Li, I'm really not lying to you. You're in a very dangerous situation now. They only have this one chance to escape. You can't waste the time that Senior has bought for you. As long as you destroy the array formation after you pass, you'll be safe." Where is the destination of the array formation? Li Yuanqing suddenly recalled that Rong City had been implementing the strategy of locking down the city recently. In the past, there had been some teleportation arrays, but they had all been sealed by themselves. Now that he suddenly mentioned this, where was this array? The great general lowered his head guiltily and said slowly, "Actually, it's the Saintess." "What?" The Saintess was afraid that something would happen in the city, so she secretly sent someone to discuss with me and connect the two cities. As the great general spoke, the guiltiness in his tone became even heavier. I didn't agree at first, but the Saintess insisted on leaving this array formation behind. I had no choice but to follow her. However, I've never really taken this place seriously. Now, I've brought this upon myself, but the great general, such a cold-blooded and heartless man, actually lowered his head and cried in the face of such a situation. Li Yuanqing snorted coldly and said, "Yi Qilua did her best for you, but you let the rumors spread in the city that she's already dead. You really have good intentions." "Young Master Li, I was wrong. I know that the Saintess has always been with you. Please tell her that this is all my fault and has nothing to do with my subordinates. I will take the initiative to bear the punishment. I hope the Saintess can forgive me." "Do you expect Yi Qilua to forgive you after you caused Rong City to be like this? Even if she can forgive you, I'm afraid the entire city won't be able to forget all the pain." "I know," the great general hurriedly said. "I hope that the Saintess can tell everyone about me and let everyone use me as a warning not to do such a divided thing again." Li Yuanqing did not have a good impression of this fellow. This person did not do anything good. Back then, he was the one who led the way to chase Yi Qilua away. However, if not for that, Li Yuanqing would not have had the chance to win Yi Qilua over to Sea City. Li Yuanqing was very satisfied with Yi Qilua's personal ability. Li Yuanqing definitely did not have any feelings for this great general. In fact, his impression of this great general was even worse than what he showed. After the great general finished speaking, he changed directions and pointed in a direction. He said to Li Yuanqing, "Young master, There's still a group of people left there. There aren't many left. Bring them all. What about you? Li Yuanqing looked at him in confusion. Why was this guy walking towards the place where he had fought just now? Could it be that he still wanted to join the wooden-faced man at this time? The great general said without looking back, "The saintess has given me a new life. Now that I've caused a huge disaster, I naturally need to make up for these disasters myself to atone for my sins. Senior is still fighting with that monster. I have to help him. I should still be useful." After saying that, he left in a hurry. Li Yuanqing had no intention of stopping him. He watched him leave for that place where there was nothing left. If he hadn't done such a thing, Li Yuanqing would probably have personally killed this acting city lord. It was all because of what he had done here that Rong City had become like this. Although Rong City might not be able to resist the invasion of external enemies with its own defense, at least it would not fall without any warning. Behind the small door was a long and narrow passageway. The passageway was filled with humans. These humans all had their heads lowered and their eyes were empty as they looked at their feet. The entire passageway had become a display cabinet for dolls. Their minds were all controlled by the wooden-faced man. Even though the wooden-faced man was already dead, his power of control still existed. Li Yuanqing casually pulled a child over and raised his head. The child's big eyes slowly opened, but what appeared was white. The child widened his big white eyes and looked at Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing was completely unprepared and checked up and down. Just as he lowered his head, the child in front of him suddenly opened his mouth and was about to bite Li Yuanqing's neck. Li Yuanqing lifted the child's clothes and exposed his stomach. There was a very small wooden piece embedded in the little fellow's chest. This piece of wood was black, and there were some very small and strange patterns on it. These patterns were still shining with a faint light from time to time. There was actually a core array formation controlling it. Li Yuanqing gently pressed his finger on the small wooden piece. With a little force, the small wooden piece shattered into two with a crack. The child's mouth had already landed on Li Yuanqing's neck. There was only a centimeter left before his mouth closed, and he was about to bite down. However, the moment the wooden piece shattered, the child seemed to have lost all his energy. He suddenly lost his motivation and collapsed. Li Yuanqing carried the little fellow on his shoulder and patted his head gently. He had checked carefully just now and realized that the power on this little fellow's body had all gathered at the core of the array formation in the center. This array core looked really strange. He had never seen such a thing before and did not know how it worked. Although Li Yuanqing was proficient in array formations, none of the knowledge he had learned in the array formation books here could engrave such a complicated array formation into such a small piece of wood. It was difficult to imagine how these people had done it. With such precision, Li Yuanqing would probably not be able to figure it out no matter what. After the core was destroyed, the little boy returned to normal. The spiritual energy flow in his body was completely restored, and there was no abnormality. Li Yuanqing checked carefully again and realized that there were no obvious changes in the human body after the core was destroyed. There should not be any side effects. After confirming it, a very huge power was released from his body. This power instantly swept through the entire passageway and accurately gathered in front of everyone's chest. For a moment, the entire passageway was filled with cracking sounds. After the cracking sounds ended, there was the sound of people falling to the ground. Those humans who had been released could no longer maintain their standing posture without the support of the core. All of them fell to the ground one by one. The entire passageway was filled with people. They fell asleep in a daze, completely unaware of what had happened to them. It was as if they had a dream that they would wake up from soon. After Li Yuanqing released everyone in Rong City, he arrived at the towering pavilion. Someone was gradually waking up. Just now, Li Yuanqing had checked everyone carefully, and there was indeed only one person. Such a fellow had controlled the entire human race and locked them up tightly. If one did not see it with their own eyes, they would probably find it difficult to believe that this was the truth. Where did he come from? Li Yuanqing was filled with doubts. Since he called this place the lower realm, he must have come from a higher dimension. What kind of world was it? Although Li Yuanqing had also come to this catacombs world from above, the spiritual energy in the world he existed in was not even as dense as here. Then, if he could reach the place where that fellow lived, would he have a chance to take another step forward and increase his strength faster? He vaguely looked forward to going to such a place. It must be a paradise for cultivators. All cultivators wanted to go to a place with extremely rich spiritual energy. He believed that after this incident, the black dragon would no longer casually come over to find trouble. According to this logic, since these strange figures were from the so-called upper realm, then what about the black dragon? The black dragon was actually with them, so it should also be from that strange place. Li Yuanqing took out the black wooden token again. This black wooden token was very strange. Because of its unique personality, there was no way to store it no matter what. There was no need to mention the storage artifacts. It could not even be placed in Li Yuanqing's domain space. Young master. Yi Qiluo looked at Li Yuanqing with a complicated expression. How could she thank this man, the man who had saved her time and time again? She already knew what had happened in Rong City. She had been suffering during this period of time. Every day, she would painfully try to contact Rong City, but Rong City had sealed itself off and she could not contact it. This time, Li Yuanqing activated this array formation again and asked her to send someone to help Rong City re-establish order. Li Yuanqing slowly drank his tea, his mind filled with the scene of his battle with the wooden-faced man. Although the demon beasts here were very powerful and their bodies were tough enough, they often lacked strategy. Rong City would not feel much pressure even against demon beasts with higher cultivation levels than them. But this wooden-faced man was different. The power in the wooden-faced man's body was not especially strong. It should not be much different from Li Yuanqing. However, under such circumstances, Li Yuanqing felt a very powerful pressure when facing the wooden-faced man. He even felt that he could not win with his own strength. It was all thanks to the carelessness of the wooden-faced man that he had some help. If not for the altar, something big would have happened. Could it be that everyone in that world was so strong? What kind of world was that? After knowing that there was such an upper world, Li Yuanqing could not calm down no matter what. He felt that he should take a look and find that world. If he went there, he might be able to wake up the signing system that had been sleeping for a long time. The signing-in system seemed to be bored with the catacombs world. Li Yuanqing had not signed in anything for a long time. He had already been to many places here. It seemed like it was time to leave. Li Yuanqing frowned and pondered. Yi Qiluo did not dare to disturb him for a long time and could only serve him carefully. After a long time, Yi Qiluo dared to ask carefully, "Young master, are you all right?"
Ye hilo genti shuk Li Yuanqing.
Li Yuanqing came back to his senses and looked at Yi Qiluo. "Young master, just now?" "Nothing. I was thinking about something. Don't worry." "That's good." Yi Qiluo slowly reported the current situation. Rong City suffered heavy losses this time and lost about 30% of its population. Fortunately, you arrived in time and saved the remaining people. They have already recovered. Although their thinking might still be a little abnormal, the impact on their bodies is not big. They should return to normal after slowly recovering.
Li Yuanqing nudda gently.
Calm them down. Since you've returned, you can be the acting city lord. Stay there until the new city lord is chosen. They need someone they can trust now. Okay. Yi Qiluo asked worriedly, that black dragon is so powerful. If he has such power just by sending a helper, what should we do if he sends someone else in the future? Li Yuanqing was also thinking about this. I'll look for him.
What?
I will find Black Dragon and ask him to give up this place. From now on, there will be no such trouble. Young master, have you already found where Black Dragon is hiding? Yi Qiluo stared at Li Yuanqing in confusion. You have to know that Black Dragon is famous for being cunning. No one knows where its true body is. There are all kinds of clones of Black Dragon scattered everywhere. Young master, don't fall into his trap. If you fall into his trap, I'm afraid. Li Yuanqing took out the black wooden token. I already know some clues. What is this? Yi Qiluo looked curiously at the black wooden token in Li Yuanqing's hand. There were no spiritual energy fluctuations on the wooden token, but why did Li Yuanqing value this thing so much? Haven't you seen it before? No, this is the first time I've seen it. Li Yuanqing shook his head silently and put the black wooden token away. He had hoped to get some information from Yichilua, but it seemed like it was hopeless. Is this the clue young master found? It should be related to the whereabouts of the Black Dragon, right? This person should be from the same place as Black Dragon. Although I don't know where they are yet, I will definitely find him. Young master, do you mean that they don't belong to this space? I'm not especially sure now. Or you can help me investigate if you have any information related to this token. It would be best if you can find it. Young master, don't worry. The seniors in the scripture library are still alive. I'll copy the appearance of this token and let them study it carefully. I believe there will be results. Thank you. Young master, you don't have to be so polite with me. I owe you too many favors. In the future, if you have any orders, please be direct. Don't be polite with me. Li Yuanqing smiled and felt that this relationship was a little strange. The array formation in Rong City has been completely destroyed. Get little man to come over and redesign the new array formation. Her current strength is enough to design a large array formation. Leave it to her. The state preceptor has just taken a vacation, and now she's being pulled back by me. The state preceptor will be unhappy. Who's unhappy? Little man had already arrived outside and ran in when she heard the two of them talking. State preceptor, you heard me just now? Of course. My ears are very sharp. The two of them had been partners for a long time. Now that they were working together again, it was even easier. Li Yuanqing also believed that they would definitely be able to rebuild Rong City. Compared to their relaxed and happy place, a sallow and thin Taoist with white eyebrows was pacing back and forth in the cave abode angrily. How did this happen? Just a brat who's still wet behind the ears? He found it unbelievable that he would lose to such a fellow. I was dealt with by a human kid from the lower realm. If this gets out, I'll be shamed. The white-browed Taoist cursed angrily, cursing from time to time. It's all this bastard Black Dragon's fault. He tricked me with a mere flood dragon's egg. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He was really greedy back then. For such a small benefit, he inexplicably ran to the lower realm. In the end, he was taught a lesson by the little guy. In front of him was a simple small case. The solid wood case was engraved with very clear patterns. These patterns were entangled with each other, and there was a ball of charred soil in the middle. This was originally a descending array. He used this array to transmit his power to the lower realm and condense that clone. However, the core component of the array formation had already been completely destroyed. The one who destroyed his array formation was an unknown human from the lower realm. Moreover, that lower realm had always been a vassal of the Black Dragon. The energy inside should have been sucked dry by the Black Dragon. How could such a powerful person be born? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He felt that this damn Black Dragon must have hidden something from him. Otherwise, he would not have been defeated so miserably. Just as he was sulking here, a hurried fluctuation suddenly came from outside the cave abode. The phantom of a Black Dragon appeared in front of him. Xuanji. The white-browed Taoist was furious when he saw this fellow and disappeared. Outside was a mountain peak shrouded in immortal aura. Halfway up the mountain, in front of a green cave abode, Black Dragon in human form was waiting in boredom. He had already transformed too many clones previously, and now was the critical moment to break through to the next realm. He could not split the power in his body again, so he found a good friend of his this time. Taoist Xuanji was cultivated by demon beasts, but unlike ordinary demon beasts, he was especially good at mechanisms. In the early years, Taoist Xuanji had acknowledged a human immortal sect as his master. That was why he felt that he had this ability. However, it was also because he had wasted too much time on the mechanism technique that Taoist Xuanji's cultivation breakthrough was inferior to his clan. Now that he was old, he would probably not be able to find a chance to advance further in his life. It was also because of this that Taoist Xuanji spent more time studying the mechanism technique. He yearned for himself to be able to seek a breakthrough on another path and obtain a longer life. However, this Taoist Xuanji, who had always had a good temper, did not have any kindness on his face when he appeared today. Black Dragon, you tricked me and caused me to lose a clone for nothing. How are you going to compensate me? Black Dragon looked at him in surprise. You failed? You still have the cheek to say that? That kid actually has such a Dharma treasure in his hand. My clone fought with him, but in the end, he used a Dharma treasure to take it. Dharma treasure? Black Dragon's expression slowly turned ugly. He had come here today to ask about the situation. Just now, in the communication, Taoist Xuanji had cut off their call without saying anything. He thought that this matter had not gone particularly smoothly, but he did not expect it to fail. Don't come looking for me in the future. Also, don't forget the flood dragon egg you promised me. Black Dragon was also aggrieved now. He was also a sucker. He had lost a flood dragon egg for no reason, and he had yet to succeed, but he was already asking for something. Xuanji, can you be reasonable too? I entrusted this matter to you and promised you a reward, but now that you've messed things up, how can you take my dragon egg? Then who will compensate me for the clone I lost? I was bewitched by you to go to the lower realm. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to go to that lousy place. Black Dragon frowned and pondered. He did not expect Li Yuanqing to be so powerful. He felt that although he was still quite powerful, his clone's move might be one level inferior and could not suppress that human. Therefore, he found Taoist Xuanji. This guy had endless methods, and his clones were unique among everyone's clones. After all, this fellow was a master of puppet techniques. No matter what, his clone should be able to deal with Li Yuanqing. However, he did not expect Li Yuanqing to win. This really subverted his imagination. Black Dragon pondered for a long time and looked at Taoist Xuanji. I can give you the dragon egg, but you have to capture that kid with me. Capture him? Taoist Xuanji said disdainfully. Then what does the lower realm, which is your territory, have to do with me? Moreover, that kid is holding a legitimate Dharma treasure. How do you think the two of us can take it down? Just based on your words, how many clones do I have to sacrifice? Black Dragon's eyes lit up. Xuanji, you saw what that human kid is holding. It's a Dharma treasure. How strong is he? He's only at the formation arrangement realm. If we kill him, the Dharma treasure will belong to the two of us. At that time, after the demon realm is stabilized, I'll just give this Dharma treasure to you. Wouldn't we make a profit? Give me the Dharma treasure? Xuanji stared at Black Dragon doubtfully. Black Dragon patted his chest and said, We've been good friends for many years. Why can't you even trust me? Moreover, I've worked hard for so many years in the lower realm. I can't let it fall into the hands of the human race easily. Wouldn't my reputation be destroyed? Xuanji snorted coldly and complained, Your reputation has long been destroyed. Black Dragon's face darkened, and he felt a little embarrassed. Let's not talk about that first. Just tell me if you want this Dharma treasure or not. If you want it, we can cooperate. I believe such a good opportunity is important to you. What's important about me? I don't have anything to lose. If you hadn't lied to me, I'd still be fine. Nothing would be missing. Think about it. Isn't your precious mechanism technique lacking a Dharma treasure as its core? Taoist Xuanji narrowed his eyes and looked at Black Dragon. He did not expect Black Dragon to be so well informed. He even knew about this. When Black Dragon saw that his scheme had succeeded, he immediately smiled proudly. Xuanji, I've already given you so many benefits just to save my reputation. So what if that Dharma treasure is compared to a lower realm? This was indeed a very good deal. If he could obtain a Dharma treasure, it would be very beneficial to his personal strength. No matter how wealthy Xuanji is, it would only increase the income of a mineral. Dharma treasures were rare. But the question is, why does that kid have a Dharma treasure? Is there someone standing behind him? I'll send someone to find out. Rong City, in a sealed stone room. Li Yuanqing's figure suddenly disappeared, and he turned around to enter his domain. The big red cocoon had actually cracked into tiny cracks. The energy emitted from those cracks felt very familiar to Li Yuanqing. He sized it up and silently sat cross-legged in front of it. An hour later, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the middle of the trembling cocoon. A bright light erupted from the crack. The intense light and tearing air shone in all directions and hit Li Yuanqing's face. Li Yuanqing silently controlled the spiritual energy fluctuations inside. The entire spiritual energy situation inside was very chaotic. It did not look like Bloodvine. In the past, the Bloodvine's control over spiritual energy was very stable. His overall technique was extremely skilled. It could be seen that he could control the spiritual energy in his body very smoothly. However, the spiritual energy on the little thing born from this big fellow was very chaotic, as if it had yet to completely master the control method of these powers. Li Yuanqing stretched out his hands, and a stream of energy from his palms slowly approached the little fellow inside. He slowly retracted the power released from his body. What was worth being happy about was that the blood vine had come back to life again. In the past, he could only feel a plant constantly growing, but he could not feel the aura of a soul. However, this time, there was indeed a spirit body living inside. Li Yuanqing suppressed the excitement in his heart and slowly controlled the scene. The originally chaotic red light slowly gathered into a small ball with a diameter of only half a meter after Li Yuanqing suppressed it. In the small red ball, a naked baby floated as if he was still sleeping. Li Yuanqing's face darkened. He thought that the blood vine would directly revive and return to his original appearance, but he did not expect that he was only in such a young state. Was he still the same blood vine? Or rather, he had completely changed into a new little thing. If the blood vine was already completely dead and only left behind a seed to grow a new individual, what value would it have to him? Li Yuanqing thought about it and did not know what to do with this little fellow in front of him. He wanted the deep knowledge of the blood vine and his understanding of the entire demon realm. With the blood vine's knowledge, he would definitely be able to help Li Yuanqing a lot, but it seemed like he had no choice now. When the energy in the red ball completely stabilized, the baby really fell asleep. His breathing was very steady, and he even stretched his limbs from time to time, like a fetus lying in its mother's womb. Li Yuanqing dispersed the excess energy outside, leaving only this small baby in his arms. He looked down at the baby in his arms and was a little depressed. He had thought that the truth would be revealed after the blood vine survived. Now that he thought about it, his thoughts at that time were still a little too simple. He had never thought that he would face such a situation. What should he do now? Just as Li Yuanqing was thinking, the little baby opened his eyes. He waved his two little hands and grabbed Li Yuanqing's cheek. They looked very intimate, as if he was treating his biological father. Li Yuanqing was a little flustered by this little guy. He did not know what this little kid liked. However, the little fellow kept begging him. Helpless, Li Yuanqing could only look around at the side. Unexpectedly, the little fellow could not hold it in any longer and rolled out of Li Yuanqing's arms. Li Yuanqing was still worried that he would be injured, but that kid was fine. He lay on the ground happily as if nothing had happened and crawled towards the pile of natural treasures that Li Yuanqing had piled up. He ran to the pile of treasures and plunged in. Li Yuanqing looked at Bloodvine helplessly and took out the key from his pocket. Bloodvine had specially stuffed the key into his pocket before he disappeared. It seemed to be very important. However, even with Bloodvine in this state, he could not find out what use it had. Was the secret of this key going to be buried in history with the disappearance of Bloodvine? Perhaps no one would know what this thing was for in this lifetime. Just as Li Yuanqing was feeling melancholic, he suddenly felt a very strange urge rise in his heart. This urge was very weak at first, but it became stronger and stronger. He looked down and saw that a red vine had wrapped around the key in his hand. The vine was very young and actually grew out of Li Yuanqing's body. It looked rather strange. This red vine was like Li Yuanqing's sixth finger as it gently wrapped around the key. Immediately after, a blurry image appeared in Li Yuanqing's heart. This scene was very gray, as if there was a thick layer of fog. He could not see the situation clearly no matter what. He did not know where he was either. He could barely tell that there was a lake in the image. The lake was very vast. The place where all the gray colors enveloped was the boundary of the lake. Li Yuanqing felt as if he was in the middle of it. He turned around and looked at the vast lake beside him, but he did not know why he was here. Where was this? Why did something happen here? He walked forward slowly. There were misty colors beside him. All the colors were so dim, as if the colors of this space had been sucked clean and there was little left. Where am I? Li Yuanqing looked down and saw that he was stepping on the vast lake water. However, the lake water was like a mirror under his feet, calm. He saw someone in the mirror. Wasn't there supposed to be an image of him here? However, the person under his feet was clearly another person. Although that appearance was different from Bloodvine in his memory, it could not be wrong. The Bloodvine that Li Yuanqing knew was already in the form of a demon. It was not strange for him to look like this. However, the person in front of him was a rather handsome man. He had seen this man before. In that secret room, in that small room, many images appeared in front of him, including this person's appearance. The two of them looked at each other, sizing each other up, for a long moment. Just as Li Yuanqing was feeling puzzled, a very powerful suction force suddenly came from behind. The suction force could not be resisted and pulled him back forcefully, pulling him back into the domain space. Li Yuanqing opened his eyes. The key was still in front of him, but the blood vine wrapped around it had disappeared. He tried to remember the scene. He had never seen that place before. It was a very strange place. That's a lake with no borders. A lake without borders? Hallmaster Wang looked up at the shelves filled with books and did not know where to start. If you can't find it, forget it. I'll think of another way. Young Master Li, don't say such things. You're the hero of our entire human race. Hallmaster Wang whispered to Li Yuanqing's side. I know you're very low-key, young Master Li. The city lords specially instructed me that I won't go around and spread it. Only the few of us know about this. No one else knows. I wonder if Hallmaster Wang has such an impression, or if there's such a strange place in the demon realm. There are many special lakes here. There are many strange demon beasts stationed in those lakes, and it's quite troublesome. I wonder which one it is. It doesn't sound easy to judge just based on this description. Then is there a lake that is haunted by gray fog all year round? Hallmaster Wang smiled and shook his head. If it's fog, it's all in the swamp. I've never heard of a lake being surrounded by gray fog all year round. However, there's still one if it's covered in golden light. Golden light? That's right. It's called Golden Light Lake. And what kind of place is Golden Light Lake? Hallmaster Wang took down a heavy book from the bookshelf and placed it on the table. There was a very exquisite picture on it. In the picture, it was a golden lake. Every inch of it was sparkling with waves, making one unable to open their eyes. Hallmaster Wang looked down at the photo of the lake and explained, Actually, this picture has already been very restrained. Every golden light on the real Golden Light Lake is hundreds of thousands of feet long. The person's eyes would be pierced through if they were to look at it. Is the light alone so powerful? Of course. This Golden Light Lake is abnormally powerful. Young master, you have to be careful. Although I know that you're extraordinary and have extraordinary abilities, that place is also an extremely rare and dangerous place. I think it's best if young master doesn't go over there if there's nothing else. It might be troublesome. Why do you say that? Hallmaster Wang looked at Li Yuanqing and shook his head. Young master, you don't know. This Golden Light Lake was formed after birth. According to history books, this thing suddenly descended from the sky one day and landed within a radius of thousands of miles. It didn't dissipate for a long time. If any living creature steps foot here, their bodies will rot and die not long after. Is it really that terrifying? What is this lake? The rumors are actually not detailed. They only describe a few events related to Golden Light Lake. But if this is a pool of lake water, how can it fall from the sky? Could it be that it rained heavily? Li Yuanqing also took the book and flipped through the records. They were very vague, and he could not tell anything. Hallmaster Wang touched his beard and said with uncertainty, If it was a heavy rain, the records in the book would definitely record it according to the rain, and they wouldn't remember it so vaguely. I think there might be something else going on, but no one in the future generations has the guts to continue exploring, so they just left it like this. Although there were a lot of records about this lake in the book, most of the pages were about how dangerous this lake was and how many casualties it had caused. There were few true detailed records of this thing. Li Yuanqing looked around and put down all the books. Although the color did not match, he vaguely felt that the lake in the picture was somewhat similar to his memory. I wonder where the Golden Light Lake is. Hallmaster Wang looked at Li Yuanqing bitterly. Young Master Li, you don't really want to go, do you? You didn't seem to listen to my persuasion just now. Hallmaster Wang, don't worry. I don't think there will be any big trouble with my strength. Just tell me. I'll be careful. Young Master Li, Hallmaster Wang said with a bitter expression, What should I do? The city lord has repeatedly reminded me to ensure your safety. But young master, you're asking for such a dangerous place now. If worse comes to worse, let me go on your behalf. How can that do? Sir, you should stay here. Hall Master Wang looked at Li Yuanqing gloomily. This young Master Li was really a very stubborn person. No one could change his mind. There are various sayings for the location of the Golden Light Lake. However, what's more reliable is that it should be in the westernmost part of the continent and is wrapped in an endless desert. If we can pass through the desert known as the Sea of Death, we can find the Golden Light Lake. In the end, Hall Master Wang looked at Li Yuanqing. He really did not want Li Yuanqing to run to such a dangerous place alone. Li Yuanqing nodded slightly, as if he did not feel anything about the Hall Master's description. That was the Sea of Death. There were countless strange demon beasts living in the desert. Those demon beasts were deeply poisonous. In order to survive, they had almost changed everything they could evolve to the extreme. They were all strange and unbelievable existences. No one would want to deal with those poisonous creatures. However, it was rumored that the Sea of Death was formed because of the Golden Light Lake inside. Young Master, you don't know how dangerous the Golden Light Lake is, but this Sea of Death is gradually formed because of the radiation of the Golden Light Lake. It's obvious how powerful it is. Li Yuanqing did not care about this at all. He cupped his hands at Hall Master Wang. Thank you for your guidance, Hall Master. Young Master, what are you doing? You're killing me. I might have to leave for a period of time. Please help me pass this to City Lord Yi. Yi Qiluo looked tiredly at the small box in front of her. This was the last thing Li Yuanqing had left behind before he left. He left just like that, as if he did not care about anything. She thought that Li Yuanqing would stay longer this time, but she had been too tired recently and did not have time to spend with young Master Li. Hall Master, didn't he say anything else before he left? Saintus, young Master Li didn't say anything before he left. He only left this behind. I think young Master Li's trip will be extremely dangerous. How could we sit by and do nothing? If anything happens to young Master Li, who can our entire human race rely on? Yi Qiluo took a deep breath and opened the box in front of her. There was a small black platform inside. She had seen this platform before. It was the Devil Crystal platform that Li Yuanqing often held in his hand. Her eyes widened as she stared in disbelief at the small item in front of her. It was an extremely valuable item. Li Yuanqing loved these things so much that he often brought them with him to fight enemies. Moreover, he had made extraordinary contributions when facing powerful enemies. Why did Li Yuanqing leave behind such a treasure? What if he encountered any more danger? City Lord, how are you? Are you all right? Where is young Master Li now? I don't know either. However, with young Master Li's speed, I'm afraid he's far away. 10,000 miles away, on a continuous mountain range, a lonely figure stood at the top of the mountain and scanned down. The hot aura dozens of miles ahead pounced on his face. Even though he was so far away, he could still clearly feel the heat. He searched for a day, and finally found the desert that Hall Master Wang had mentioned. It was this continuous mountain range that blocked the heat emitted by the desert. Otherwise, if this heat spread inside, the entire continent would probably become such a desolate desert. There was not a single blade of grass on the outside of the mountain range. The stones had completely split up, and there were waves on one side of the entire mountain range. The shape of the wind could be clearly seen. This power and destruction was probably the Golden Light Lake that Hall Master Wang had mentioned. Originally, according to Hall Master Wang, although the Golden Light Lake was very terrifying, it was not enough to make people shrink back. However, when he really saw it today, he could not help but be shocked. Before he could see the Golden Light Lake, he was already burned by such terrifying flames. Li Yuanqing was a little worried about what would happen when he got closer. However, his goal this time was to find the place indicated by Bloodvine. He had to find it. It was important to him. After confirming the direction, Li Yuanqing jumped down from the mountain peak. His body only appeared in the air for a moment before disappearing without a trace. The hot heat of the desert roasted all the creatures here. A few scorpions were digging restlessly under the sand. They seemed to feel a threat. They had dug especially hard today. The sand behind them suddenly lit up. A huge hand came down from above and grabbed the back of the scorpion, catching the poisonous creature that was digging. In the eyes of others, this little scorpion was an extremely terrifying existence. As long as one touched the thorns on its body, half of their body would be paralyzed. However, this fellow in front of it was actually so arrogant that he directly grabbed it. He was simply lawless. The little scorpion waved its tail, wanting to rely on the twisting of its tail to adjust the direction of its entire body. It wanted to use the sharp hooks on its tail to sting the enemy behind it and teach this fellow a lesson. However, Li Yuanqing would not give it such a chance. He held it firmly and flipped the little scorpion over to place it in front of him. He observed it carefully, and it was unknown what he was looking at. The patterns here are much heavier. It looks like we're getting closer. Li Yuanqing, who was holding the scorpion, had an ancient expression on his face. Even someone as strong as him had lost a lot of spiritual energy after traveling in such a desert for a few days. The desert here was very vast, and the restrictions on spiritual energy were too serious. If Li Yuanqing ran with all his might, it would definitely not take so long. However, he could not replenish his spiritual energy here. The spiritual energy here had all been assimilated by that special power, bringing with it a very irritable, corrosive power. If it was simply absorbed into his body, it would easily injure him without adjustment. Fortunately, Li Yuanqing had thick spiritual energy in his body. Although he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy, he could still withstand it. After a few days, he felt like he was getting closer and closer. The patterns on the animals here became clearer and clearer. They, the spirit beasts, were all deeply affected by this lake. All the spirit beasts growing at the side had special patterns on their bodies. Those special patterns were not especially eye-catching from the outside, but they became more and more obvious the deeper he went. At this point, the patterns were completely engraved in every corner of their bodies. Moreover, there was a faint golden light circulating on the pattern. This was a new situation that he had discovered after entering. At this moment, a very strong signal suddenly came from Li Yuanqing's heart. He was very familiar with this signal. It was the signal of the blood vine. The blood vine instructed him to head in a direction. Li Yuanqing followed the direction of the feeling and slowly explored forward. After walking for about 100 miles, he found the little fellow in a very inconspicuous sand dune. This was the seed of the blood vine. It was very shriveled now and was about to turn into dry wood. Usually, seeds were very round and energetic, but there was no vitality on this little fellow. One could only see that it was half dead, but at least it could still survive. Li Yuanqing was surprised by the powerful vitality of this thing and took it back. He did not know how this little seed had climbed here step by step. The process must have been very difficult. However, the most important thing was what its motive was for him to break through the layers of obstacles and spend so much effort to get here. Li Yuanqing recalled the words that the blood vine often said to him in the past. He said that he had discovered a place where the treasures of an immortal king were hidden and wanted to trick him over. As long as he obtained these treasures, he would be able to dominate the entire demon realm. Could this be the places he had discovered? Li Yuanqing felt the powerful force coming from inside and carefully explored it. The temperature in the desert was getting higher and higher. The dregs under his feet had also turned transparent white, as if flames would spray out at any moment. This feeling was very bad and made one feel very insecure. As expected, Li Yuanqing suddenly felt nothing under his feet as he walked. He raised his feet and his body soared into the air. He landed in midair and looked at the place he had just stepped on. He did not even sense that the sand under his feet had melted because the temperature was too high. It could still hold on when no one stepped on it, but with the weight of such a person, it directly destroyed the entire structure of the sand. The sand could no longer hold on and collapsed. Li Yuanqing no longer dared to walk here on foot. He rose into the air and rushed in without looking back. He was about to reach the core. This was the purpose of his trip. No matter what, he had already arrived here. He had to go in and see what was inside. A dazzling golden light blinded people. The light was like a living arrow that pierced into their eyeballs, wanting to shatter them. Li Yuanqing did not dare to be careless. He covered his eyes and took out the special glasses he had prepared previously to block his eyes. In fact, this was something that Hall Master Wang was really worried about, and specially prepared for Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing originally thought that he would not need it, but it seemed that he was thinking too much. This thing was indeed useful. After wearing these glasses, all the light seemed to have weakened greatly. He did not expect this thing to be unexpectedly useful. There was indeed a lake in front of him. It was a very wide lake. The lake flickered with a golden color. The color was completely different from what he had seen in his illusion. However, it must have been distorted by the power here when the seed transmitted the signal back. However, where was he going to find the use of this key in this vast lake? Li Yuanqing took out the key and looked at the vast lake in front of him in distress. He had to find an answer here, but it did not look like he could find any answers now. He took out the little baby and held it in his palm, looking at him helplessly. This little guy was really heartless. He was already so badly battered, but the little guy really did not feel anything at all, as if it had nothing to do with him. Li Yuanqing still made up his mind. Since he was standing on the lake in the dream, and there seemed to be someone under the lake, it meant that as long as he could come to the lake, he would definitely discover something. Yes, that had to be it. There was no mistake. That was the way the dream guided him. Li Yuanqing gently stepped on the surface of the lake. At this moment, the surface of the lake was still very calm. Even if he stepped on it, there would be no waves. However, as soon as his foot landed, he felt an extremely dangerous feeling devouring him. This feeling was extremely strong, making him very uneasy. He suddenly retracted his foot. Just as his body was about to come into contact with the lake, a long tentacle suddenly extended out. At first, the tentacle was just a small dot. Slowly, it became a large pile and wrapped around Li Yuanqing's ankle. It was the power of fire that had materialized. Most of the power had already condensed into his unique soul. Although the little fire spirits did not have high spiritual energy, they had a lot of it. The entire lake was formed by these spirit bodies. Li Yuanqing looked at his feet with lingering fear. If he had stepped down just now, he would have been wrapped by those things and would not have been able to escape. He took out a small boat. This small boat was made of a very cold black jade. This jade was the water of extreme Yin, representing pure water attribute energy. Li Yuanqing tentatively threw the boat onto the lake. He even carefully took a step back. After being thrown out, the boat gently floated up. Under it, a puff of white smoke isolated the hull from the lake below. The fire spirits below seemed to hate the thing above very much and were avoiding it. They even formed a small depression, as if this small boat was sailing on the lake. Seeing this, Li Yuanqing hurriedly jumped into the small boat and drove it slowly towards the center of the golden light lake. Li Yuanqing sat in the middle of the lake, while the little guy sat on his shoulder. The two of them straightened their bodies and looked ahead. The golden light lake was endless. He had been walking like this for an hour, but there was no change. It was so quiet all around that there was no sound at all. Only the sound of the little fire spirits jumping out and playing with each other was slightly different from the sound of water falling. This sound was even thicker, making people feel that there was a very abundant energy jumping in their ears. Li Yuanqing still had not found the place he was looking for. What was that place? Li Yuanqing did not know. The little guy was hugging a medium-grade spirit stone on his shoulder and eating it like it was a pea cake. He ate to his heart's content and was not polite at all. Li Yuanqing kept asking the little guy in his heart, but the little guy was still not anxious. It seemed like he had yet to reach the critical moment. Bloodvine, I've come to such a dangerous place for a key. You can't harm me. Li Yuanqing pulled the little guy over and widened his eyes. The little guy's eyes innocently fanned the flames like a harmless child. He was just a child. What could he say? I shouldn't have believed you would come to such a place. It's really... Just as Li Yuanqing was complaining, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Congratulations on signing in successfully. Reward 1. Wood Spirit Clone. Reward 2. Tears of the Immortal Spirit. Choose the Wood Spirit Clone. Received a Wood Spirit Clone. A palm-sized wooden figure lay quietly in Li Yuanqing's palm. He carefully examined the little fellow. He was still excited when he chose it just now, but after choosing, he suddenly fell into a daze. He did not know what this thing was used for. Since it's called a clone, it must be a high-level puppet. Li Yuanqing thought for a moment and used the puppet technique. He dropped a drop of his blood essence onto the head of the wooden figure. He slowly sank his mind into the little guy's body and tried to control him to stand up. However, as soon as his divine sense entered, he immediately felt a very strong suction force from the puppet. The suction force was very powerful. Before Li Yuanqing could react, he was sucked in. When Li Yuanqing opened his eyes again, the scene in front of him had changed into a very strange place. This place was filled with towering mountains. Every mountain was lush and green. Colorful plants covered the mountain, covering the entire mountain with a very dense, mysterious aura. With the cover of the clouds, it was like a legendary immortal realm. There were even many immortal cranes soaring through the clouds. Such a beautiful scene was probably only possible for the place where the immortal lived. Li Yuanqing did not know why he was here. He was in his mystic realm just now and had inexplicably arrived here. Moreover, everything in front of him had changed. He did not feel any energy fluctuations being sent over, as if everything was like this to begin with. What the hell is going on? Li Yuanqing stood halfway up a mountain. He did not seem to feel anything. When he looked down, his body had turned into wooden lumps. A wooden body, wooden arms, wooden hands, and wooden feet. He suddenly remembered how similar his appearance and structure were to the so-called wood spirit clone that had just appeared. Could all of this really be related to the wood spirit clone? What was the use of that clone? Where was he now? Why had he become like this? Just as he was feeling puzzled, he suddenly felt some subtle fluctuations in the forest behind him. Although this wooden figure did not look very eye-catching, its sense of touch and sharp vibrations were still very outstanding. Its perception of spiritual energy fluctuations was also very strong. Li Yuanqing felt that the power here was slightly different from the world he was in, but it was almost similar in essence. He could slowly familiarize himself with it. He carefully hid behind a big tree behind him and vacated the place he had been standing just now. As soon as he hid, a burly wild boar rushed out of the forest. After the wild boar ran to the foot of the slope, it stopped and first panted heavily, two thick white fog coming out of its nostrils. Then, the wild boar carefully hid under the slope and secretly looked up, as if it was wary of something. After staring up for a while, the wild boar finally relaxed. It lay on the slope with its fat body and spoke in human language. Damn it! This brat insisted on forcing me into a corner. Fortunately, I'm smart enough. Otherwise, I would really die there today. As the wild boar spoke, its entire body trembled twice. Its fat body slowly became thin and weak, and it actually transformed into a human. However, although he had transformed into a human, there was still a very thick fur on his back, making him look very ferocious. The fellow twisted his body from side to side, as if he was checking his current body. He had also noticed that there were still so many eye-catching pig fur on his back. He was very dissatisfied with this. He shook his wide back and actually shook off the fur on his body. It had to be known that in Li Yuanqing's understanding, although these demons could transform into human form, they would more or less retain their demon form and were very difficult to change. However, this fellow actually threw away his burdens without any obstruction. This completely overturned Li Yuanqing's understanding. Was this still the world he lived in? Why was everything so strange? It was completely different from his understanding. The wild boar casually pulled a leaf from a big tree at the side and covered itself. He casually touched his body, and the leaf that covered his body actually turned into a very appropriate piece of clothing. After this operation, the wild boar nodded in satisfaction. He was very at ease with his current situation. These bastards, I won't come here anymore. Let's see where you can capture me. I won't come back for the rest of my life. The wild boar cursed. No one knew what he meant. They could only tell that he did not seem to have a good impression of the people on the mountain. He seemed to have been bullied on the mountain. Li Yuanqing only sensed a little and discovered that the wild boar cursing in front of him was actually a little higher than his cultivation level. It was a demon expert at the peak of the formation arrangement realm. He was already so powerful, yet he was still bullied here. This was too unreasonable. What kind of strength did the person on it have to be able to humiliate it like this? Could it be that he could see the legendary supremacy realm expert in this world? Li Yuanqing made up his mind and crawled out from behind the tree. He smiled at the depressed wild boar that was walking down the mountain. Li Yuanqing's wooden body transformed into a body of flesh and blood. He looked ordinary. The wild boar was sulking and thinking about how to get back at them in the future when such a human suddenly appeared in front of him. He was shocked. He took a step back warily and glared at Li Yuanqing, not knowing what this little fellow was going to do. "Kid, what do you want? Let me warn you, although you humans can group up and be arrogant, there will always be people who are alone. I won't argue with you today. I advise you not to cause trouble here. Otherwise, you will suffer." Although his words were very firm, one could tell that he was very weak, as if he was really afraid of Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing was very puzzled by this. He smiled again to express his goodwill. He wanted to get close to him, but he did not appreciate it. The more he walked forward, the more the guy retreated in fear. The two of them were on guard against each other. He did not know who was the more terrifying one. "Senior, what are you doing?" His greeting shocked the wild boar. The wild boar even looked behind him to confirm if there was someone standing behind him. He did not notice. "Brat, don't pretend here. Those old men in your family won't follow you. Don't scare me. I'm much bolder than you think." Li Yuanqing stood on the spot and scratched his head. He did not know how kind he had to be to make this frightened wild boar believe him and really come to talk to him. This fellow seemed to think that everyone was his enemy. "I wonder why you're so afraid of me when we have no grudge?" The wild boar glared at Li Yuanqing impatiently and said, "Forget it. None of you humans are good. Stop fooling around with me. I've already made it very clear to you that neither of us will interfere with each other. We will mind our own business. Don't pester me anymore." Li Yuanqing spread out his hands in confusion. "Senior Zhu, I'm not thinking of doing anything to you, right? Why are you so nervous? Cut the crap. I have a headache whenever I see you humans. I'll scram further away from you. Just treat it as my bad luck today, okay?" As the wild boar spoke, he fell beside Li Yuanqing and rolled into a ball before rolling down the mountain. In the beginning, he was still testing the waters, but later on, he let go. His speed was like a runaway wheel as he fled down the mountain. It was as if a very terrifying enemy was following behind him, scaring him so much that he had nowhere to run. Therefore, he had no choice but to speed up and escape down the mountain. Li Yuanqing was really confused now. The strength of this wild boar was above his. He could clearly feel that if the two of them really fought, he would most likely lose given that he was only a clone and did not have any useful weapons in his body. However, the wild boar had no concept of this advantage at all. He turned around and fled. Did he really think that he had no chance of winning? This was really strange. Just as Li Yuanqing was observing the wild boar, another very strong aura came from the mountain. A flying sword pierced through the forest and landed beside Li Yuanqing. "Who is it?" In front of him was a young man. This young man was very handsome and had a young face. He looked at Li Yuanqing warily. He was not as afraid as the wild boar just now. Instead, he was scrutinizing him.
"Hello, I'm..."
"That's not right. Why don't you have the aura of a living person? Who are you?" What's your relationship with that black pig?" Li Yuanqing looked at this guy gloomily. He really did not give him any time to speak and kept asking questions. "Brother, the aura of the lower realm? Take this." The young man suddenly became vigilant and stabbed the sword in his hand at Li Yuanqing's face. Li Yuanqing could not dodge in time and was about to be stabbed. The scene in front of him flashed, and he suddenly returned to where he was. He was still in the domain space. No, everything was wrong. He suddenly remembered that he should be in Golden Light Lake now. But where was this place? What had happened? It was too strange. Everything was too strange. The wooden figure was still lying quietly in his palm. He looked down. It was the mysterious system from before that had jumped out again and told him that he had signed in successfully and thrown such a wooden figure into his hands. Therefore, everything had changed. The crux of the problem must be this little fellow. What was this? What was the use of this strange and puzzling with spirit clone? He still could not figure it out at all. Above the golden light lake, a figure suddenly flashed out. Li Yuanqing stood firmly and looked at the golden river below. He vaguely felt a rich aura flowing in the river. He was familiar with this aura. It's there. It was that illusion-like place just now. When he appeared there just now, Li Yuanqing had once felt this extremely rich aura and this feeling. What was the connection between the golden light lake and where he was just now? No matter what, they must be related. Although he did not know how this would help him find the answer to the key, it would at least resolve a doubt in his heart. Thinking of this, Li Yuanqing suddenly had an idea. Since the wood spirit clone could reach that place just now, what would happen if he placed the wood spirit clone in the golden light lake? He took out the wood spirit clone again. He held the key in his left hand and the wood spirit clone in his right hand. He looked at this very small clone with a pained expression. Although he had just obtained this clone, he could feel that this fellow's body contained endless power. If he used it properly, it would definitely bring him great benefits. However, if this piece of wood could not withstand the powerful force in the river, it would shatter just like that. It had not been easy for him to obtain it. He could not accept it if it was shattered just like that. He hesitated, conflicted, unsure if he should do this. However, now was not the time to think too much about it. He had searched the golden light lake, but did not find any signs of breaking through. If he continued to search like this, he did not know when he would be able to find it. This was a good opportunity. What if he succeeded? Li Yuanqing gritted his teeth and slowly moved his hands towards the golden lake. He placed the key together with the wooden figure and gently placed it on the surface of the golden light lake.